Assalamu alaikum. How are you all? How was the weekend? Okay. During our last lecture, we discussed about Lucknow Pact and Khilafat movement. Right? Now we will take a start from there. Please settle down. We will take a start from there. As you know that there was, while I was discussing the Lucknow Pact, and Lucknow Pact, you know, All India Muslim League, they just agreed that they would not insist on their majority in Bengal and Punjab. Right? Now, if you see the map of India, this has been published by the Oxford. This is the map of India in 1909. You can see that, right? This is demographic map of India, particularly showing the population of Mohammedans, which were Muslims, right? So it is showing the population, you know, you can, like over 75%, it will be dark green, right? And then 50 to 75%, it will be light green, like this. Then 20 to 50%, it would be lighter than that one, like this. And then 10 to 20% would be like this, right? And 5 to 10% would be like this, right? So now you can see that this is the area of Bengal. The population of Bengal was predominantly Muslim, if you can see, right? Like this, over 75%, then even 50 to 75%, you can see, right? So it was densely populated by the Muslim. Yes, of course, you know, Hindus were there. Likewise, Punjab, right? You can see almost the population of Muslim, it is quite thick over here, and then it is thin, but still, you know. So controversy was there whether Punjab is a Muslim dominated province, Bengal is a Muslim dominated province, or it is a Hindu dominated province. So this controversy was there, and that is why Muslim League, in order to resolve issue and come to a common ground with the Congress, it just, you know, gave up its demands, and it's paved the way for unity in this sense, right? So this was one of the questions which someone of you asked during the last lecture, so I thought that I should clarify this thing. You can see another map, right, of 1909, right? And in this map, you can see that the Mohammedans are like green and the Hindus are in red, right? So then again, look at it, right? Bengal, predominantly Muslim, Punjab, predominantly Muslim, part of it which are still in current India, they were Hindus. So that is why this decision was quite difficult for the Muslims at that time, and it was a controversy. One community was insisting that they were in majority, while the other was insisting that they were in majority. So it was a conflict, a bone of contention between the two communities, and that was why they thought to resolve it. So the Muslim League, you know, just it said, okay, it would not insist that Muslim League is in the majority in these provinces, so that they can come to a common ground, right? This is the situation of India. Now, then we explained something about the Khilafat movement. But you know, Khilafat movement, it was in India, Khilafat movement, but Indian Muslims had, they were quite sympathetic towards the Ottoman Empire, and now we can see what was the situation of Ottoman Empire in 1639. This is 1639. You can see areas of North Africa, areas of Europe, they were under the Ottoman Empire. Only Saudi Arabia and these areas, you know, these areas were out of the Ottoman Empire, and then, you know, you can come here, and this is Pakistan, this is Iran, so Afghanistan, so they were out of the Ottoman Empire's domain, right? So you can see here that the Ottoman Empire was quite an extensive one, right? It was spread in 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and North Africa, or Africa, right? This was the situation in 1639. Now you can see the same map of Ottoman Empire with the current names. The red color is just, you know, a kind of demarcation, or it is the area which was under the domain of the Ottoman Empire. So the current Egypt was in this, Tunisia was in this, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, part of Ukraine, you know, and then Slovakia, part of Slovakia, Hungary, right, and Serbia, Greece, Athens, these areas, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Azerbaijan, Georgia, current, right, they were under the Ottoman Empire. Now what happened? That in 1913, you can see in previous map, if you go back, compare the previous map, this one or this one with this one, right? So then you can see that that was 15th, 17th century, and now this is 20th century, right? So in the 20th century, the Ottoman Empire was squeezing, and the European colonial powers, they were expanding, right? So Ottoman Empire had lost a lot of territory during the past 3 centuries, and now the seat of caliphate or the caliph was there, and the British government, or because caliph or the Ottoman Empire, it was siding with Germany in the First World War, and Germany was, as we know, it was a defeated power. It was defeated in the First World War, right? So definitely the victorious powers, they had to, they had to put some restrictions, they had to bring them to some terms, the defeated powers, and Ottoman Empire was one of those defeated powers. So that was why the Muslims were quite worried about the fate of the Ottoman Empire. During the First World War, the Indian Muslims or the Indian population, they participated in the war on the side of the Britain as soldiers. They were fighting in this war, and they were expecting that after the war, the British would, in return of their services in the World War I, they would not put some humiliation treaties on Turkey. So they were expecting this thing, and after the war it did not happen. This was one of the causes, or one of the major causes of the Khilafat movement in India, that the Muslims of India, even the Hindus in India, though when they saw that the Muslims are against the British government in that Khilafat movement, and they are putting pressure on the British government, so they put their weight behind the Muslims, and then they started agitating against the British government in India in shape of Khilafat movement, right? This is what we have studied, or we had studied during the last lecture, but I thought to clarify this thing more in shape of a map so that you can get it, right? That what were the causes behind these things, right? So now Khilafat movement is almost done. We have discussed this. We will go forward, and we would see what is in the box for us now. As I have already discussed that it was a failure, but it showed the Muslim of subcontinent that if they can put their pressure against the British government in a unified manner, then they can achieve a lot of things. So they learned their lessons from Khilafat movement, and then later on they tried to present their demands in a unified manner against the British government, and most of their demands, particularly the Pakistan movement, or the demand of a separate homeland, that was accepted. So you can see that they were evolving, they were getting together as a nation, and this thing was, though it was a failure, but they say that failure is a stepping stone towards success, right? So this failure just paved the way for their success in 1940s then. Okay, now in 1919, the British government, they gave another constitution to India, which is commonly known as Montague-Chelmsford Reform, right? So this constitution was gave to India. These were the name of the 2 prominent people who were who proposed these demand, or who brought these constitutional changes, or who brought this new constitution to India. So that is why they have been named after it, right? Okay, what happened that the Muslims and Hindus, they were agitating against the Great Britain. The Great Britain, though victorious in the First World War, but was quite weak, came out of it quite weak, right? Because as we know that there is no winner in the war. One loses more and the other loses less. This is what the outcome of a war is all about. There is no winner in war, right? So the Great Britain was also losing its ground, its strength and everything, and then it thought that it cannot afford a lot of problems in British India, So it needs to pacify the Indian sentiments, and that is why these new reforms were given to India, right? And in Lucknow Pact they had asked for the self-rule in India, right? The Muslims and the Hindus both asked for self-rule in India. So they were considering these things as well, and a lot of other pressures, and then the Khilafat movement, and all this stuff was going on, and in the movement, in the meanwhile they then presented this new constitution for India, right? Well, and it was, as I have told you, it was under the impression, or it was during the like at the end of the First World War, and the British was weak, and they wanted to they wanted to pacify somehow the Indian sentiment, so that pressure from one side is at least relieved, right? Okay, these are details of the reform, so I would not go into that much background details. You can read it by yourself. This is the background which I am telling you, like verbally, so we do not need to go through all these slides, but you just need to go through it at home, and then you will be like, this is all the background, right? Now, what were the main features of these reforms? The clauses or the main features, we would focus a bit on this thing. The Secretary of State was to comprise, the Council of the Secretary of State was to comprise of 8 to 12 people. 3 of them should be Indians. Now, representation of the Indians in the cabinet of the council was increased, right? One of the demands of the Indians that our representation should be increased. And at least half of them should have spent at least 10 years in India, right? So the member of the council, like 3 of them should be Indian, and even then those who are non-Indians, half of them should have at least spent 10 years in India, so that they can understand the Indian dynamics, the politics, and the ground realities in India, right? Then there was a bicameral legislature was there. 2 houses were there. Bicameral means 2 houses, upper and lower house. So this bicameralism was there. The upper house or the state council was there, you can see it, and then the lower house, the legislative council, was there. This is a detail of how these things were made. I would not like to get into it because it is purely a matter of political science. So you can study it, you can study these details at home, but I would not like to go into it and explain all this stuff, how many members and how much were supposed to be selected, and how much were supposed to be, representative or something like that. Powers were divided between the centers and the provinces. Now this is a very important thing, because at center there was the British government was ruling, and at provinces, the different communities, they used to be elected, and so powers were divided between the centers and the provinces, right? Most important central subjects. Central subject means those areas in which the center can carry out its policies, right? So most important central subjects were defense, as it is related to the whole country, so that is why it should be with the center. Then the foreign affairs, it is the representation of your country in other countries, so it should be with the center again. Customs, the goods which come to your country, and then you levy taxes on it, and so it should be with the centers, and relation with the Indian states, right? Princely states, which it means, right? So they were definitely with the center. Then currency, there should be a unified currency in the whole country, so that should be with the center as well. And then railways, which is a means of physical communication with each other. So that was within the whole country, so that is why it was with the center. There were some provincial subjects as well, like local or self-government. Public health was under the provincial domain, and education was under the provincial domain, right? So provinces were given these 3 subjects, or some other as well, but these were some of the prominent subjects which are the provinces were given, and they could make policies in these sectors for their own provinces, and the policies of one province might be different from that of another province, but that was not an issue because they were free to do so, right? The salary of the Secretary of State for Indian affairs should be paid from the British Exchequer, right? Previously that salary was paid by the Indian Treasury, but now they were demanding that this salary should be paid by the British Exchequer because the Secretary of State used to be an Englishman serving in the Great Britain, right? So it was related to them, so that is why they said that this salary should be given by you, not us, right? Okay. The system of diarchy, or kind of a double government in the provinces, was introduced. I will explain it shortly, right? Provincial subjects were divided into two categories: transfer and reserved. Now the provincial subject, like the local government, the education and public health, they were transfer and reserve subjects, right? So I just explained some of them, but there were many others. So transfer and reserve subjects. What are the transfer subjects? Which were public health, education, local self-government, agriculture, were under the control of the minister, like the transfer subjects were unimportant, right? Now ministers were supposed to be elected. This is what diarchy means now. It is explained here, right? A dual kind of government in the provinces. And the reserve subjects included administration, police, land revenue, which were under the control of the governor with the help of his secretary. So governor was an agent of the federal government. So it was two kind of system prevailing in the provinces: secretaries elected by the people, governor appointed by the governor general or the viceroy. So it was a dual sort of system of government, and that is what we call diarchy, right? In their particular domain, everybody is free to take a decision, like the governor is supposed to take decision in the domains, in the reserve subjects, and the transfers. Yeah, in every province it was the same case, right? So the domains were divided, like public health, education and local government and other, in those matters ministers could take decisions. And in the other subjects, like this revenue, land revenue and other police and administrative, other administration, these decisions were supposed to be taken by the governors. So in the same province, two kind of decision-making processes were prevailing, and that is known as diarchy.
And still, sir, the main or important domains were under the government.
Exactly, under the central government, right? Okay, now what was the Congress reaction to these demands, to this constitution? Congress did not participate in the election of 1920, which were held under the 1919 Act. Right, so it was a reaction. Congress did not approve of it. It was against the reforms. Then in 1923 election, it decided to participate. Just they were just of the opinion. The Congress leadership was of the opinion that if we participate in the election and if we are somehow elected, right, then we can remove these reforms by constitutional means from within, right? From within the parliament, like then we can bring constitutional amendments, and we can even pass a resolution that we do not accept these demands and we should be given something else which we accept, which we approve, right? The Muslim reaction for this, though Muslim League did not reject it the way Congress did, right? But still Muslim League was not, or Muslims were not completely satisfied with these reforms, right? It did not participate in the election because of understanding with the Congress, the Lucknow Pact and these kind of understanding, they were still there. So when Congress was not doing it, they said, okay, we would also not be doing it, so we should not be participating in the election. But in the process, what happened that the Muslim League could have a lot of benefits out of this, out of these reforms for the Muslims, but they were agitating, they were just lining up with the Congress, so that was why they did not participate in the election. And all the benefits, if there were some benefits, they were somehow the Congress was able to achieve or to get those benefits, and the Muslims did not get these kind of benefits for the Muslim community. So the Muslims suffered the most, right? And the Congress, it did not, or the Hindus, they did not suffer that much under even as a result of this agitation. Now again, there is another topic, we will discuss this topic, but the background of this topic is that the Muslims and the All India Muslim League and Congress, they were not approving this 1919 Act, the British government had said that they would review this act in 20 years, which was 1929. But under this agitation, in 1927 they sent a commission, the Simon Commission, to look into the prospects of future constitution in India, a kind of a constitution which can be acceptable to both these communities, so that the communal issue is resolved peacefully, right? So this was the Simon Commission, and you can see in the picture what do they say in Hindi and in Urdu? Simon वापस जाओ, Simon go back, right? They did not accept, the Muslims and the Hindus, they were again agitating against the Simon Commission. They did not accept the Simon Commission. Now, what was their opinion? We will be studying it in detail, in bits and pieces, right? The commission just came, it just presented its solution, it just started working in the Indian environment, and it started meeting people so that a truly representative and a truly acceptable constitution for the Indian people could be devised. You need to keep one thing in mind, that though they rejected this thing, but even today, this is a classical state document which they had presented. They had meticulously worked on this document, and it was a great piece of writing, a great piece of constitutional proposal for resolving kind of communal issues, right? So it was a great document. If you ever get a chance, you can just read this document. If you later on go to the classes of political science and try to read something related to the political history of India, then you can refer to this document and you can read and you can dissect this in detail, right? Okay. At the end of the Simon Commission, it just told the British government about the demands of the Muslims and Congress, that they were of the opinion that no commission should have authority to devise a constitution for us. We should be asked for making a constitution for ourselves, and not some foreigner, right, or some English person. At that, they say that in India they cannot come together on a common ground. The Muslims and the Hindus, they cannot come together on a common ground. There, if I have just included that statement, you would see, okay, that statement is not there. But a statement was given by a member of the commission that they do not have the ability to present their own constitution in which they can, work as a nation, in which they can forget about their communal issues and they can come to some common ground. So both these communities do not have the ability to present one constitution for India. As a result, the all parties conference was called. All major parties present in India, including Muslim League and the Unionist Party and this All India National Congress and other medium-sized and small-sized parties, they sat together and they thought of devising a constitution, a common constitution for India, like the main features of a common constitution for India. Though they were quite close to kind of an agreement, but the communal issue could not be resolved, and that is why they could not reach to an agreement on this issue. Then Motilal Nehru, he presented his report, right, that okay, we agree on this constitution. This is the picture of Motilal Nehru, right, the father of Jawaharlal Nehru. So they agreed that this is what we call Nehru report, right? Okay, what this is the statement. This is that statement I was talking about. That they cannot, unanimous constitution cannot be presented in India. They do not have this ability, so they cannot come up with a unanimous constitution. As a reaction of this, these things happened. Now, what was in the Nehru report? These were the parties which participated in the and some other parties were there in this all parties conference, which I explained, right? as I have explained, that they could not reach on the rights of minorities or resolve the communal issues in this conference, in this all parties conference, right? But this report is commonly known as the Nehru report, right? Main features of this report: it should be given, India should be given dominion status and a parliamentary form of government, right now, which was a form of government prevailing in the Great Britain. So they were asking for that kind of government, and they knew bicameral legislature and Senate and state, and they were just getting into detail of that bicameralism under the Nehru report. Governor General will act on the advice of the Executive Council. It was to be collectively responsible to the Parliament. They again said that the Governor General will not act arbitrarily, though, but it will be acting on the advice of the Cabinet, the Council, and members of the Council would be definitely, most of them would be from India or Indians. So this advice was sought in this, and then the it would be collectively responsible to the Parliament. I have already told you about the collective responsibility of the responsible government in one of the previous classes. So this is what they mean by it, right? Then there should be federal form of government in India with residuary powers vested in the center, right? Now, when you define something, this is central list, these are central subjects or federal subjects, these are provincial subjects. Even then, there are a lot of subjects which you cannot name, then you call it residuary powers, right, or residuary subjects. So when these residuary subjects are given to the provinces, it means that you are empowering the provinces. And when they are given to the center, it means that you are empowering the center. So Congress, definitely it knew that under election it would be in the center, it would be forming a government in the center. So they were asking that these residuary powers should be given to the center, so that later on, if they are elected and they are running the government, they are running the show, then they would be able to use these powers and implement their own kind of things on the provinces, right? Because in residuary powers a lot of things can come. Okay, there will be separate electorate for minorities. There will be no separate electorate. Now when in 1916 they had agreed that for the Muslims it would be separate electorate, right? And these electorate were given in 1909, 1919, and now they are asking that there should be no separate electorate in 1929. So the Muslims and the Hindus, the gap between both these community was widening, right? What was their stance against to support this argument that since separate electorate awakens communal sentiments, therefore it should be scrapped and joint electorate should be introduced, right? So an infringement of the Muslims or the community's rights, right? The minorities' rights. System of weightage should not be adopted for any province. I have already explained the concept of system of weightage. What is this weightage, right? And why it is given. This is what I have explained. I think it is clear to you, right? Does everybody know about it? Okay, you tell me what is what is the system of weightage? Okay, who knows it?
The 3/4 of the members of parliament should be from the continent and
Okay, you? Yes, you.
Sir, अगर 1/3 of the population किसी constitution को deny कर देती है तो फिर वो pass नहीं होती?
Yes, up to some extent you are right. Yes, you please.
Sir, there should be 3/4 of the members to pass it bill and 1/3 of the members to carry it.
But weightage. Weightage is given in cases in which the population of a community does not is less than this 33% of the total population, and then like if it is 30%, 25%, and then you want to ensure their rights, so you give them weightage so that they are able to stop any constitutional amendment which is not in their favor. This is what weightage is. This is what we call weightage, right? And then there will be no reserved seats for communities in Punjab and Bengal, right? So this was again against the Muslims' aspirations. However, the reservation of the Muslim seats could be possible in the provinces where the Muslim population should be at least 10%, right? So then they said, okay, when the population is at least 10%, then we can give this reservation. Otherwise, in Punjab and Bengal, it was almost 50-50%. So they said, okay, you can just be elected in general election, and you do not need reserved seats for your population, for the rights of your population, right? Then judiciary should be made independent from the executive. I have again, I have discussed this thing, I think in one of the previous classes, that what does it mean? Why do you need to separate judiciary from the executive, right, to make it more independent? Then there should be 1/4 Muslim representation at the center, like 25%, right? Sindh should be separated from Bombay, provided it proves to be financially self-sufficient, right? So Sindh was part of it, and then they say, okay, we can. Reforms should be introduced in the northwest frontier province, right? It was again demanded. Now, what was this report was not acceptable to the Muslims, right? And that is why Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah or the Muslim League, they presented some amendments or some points for this report. They say that if you incorporate these points and if you amend some of your points and introduce these points, then we can come up with a joint declaration that yes, these can be the features of a future Indian constitution, right? Now, 4 amendments were there. There should be no less than 1/3 Muslim representation at the center. Like they were saying that 25%, they were demanding, the Muslims were demanding 33% minimum, right? So that thing was, the Muslims asked for this. Then in the event of adult suffrage not being established, Punjab and Bengal should have seats reserved for the Muslims on population basis, right? Like they say that, okay, there should be no reserved seat in Punjab and Bengal, but now they are saying that if adult franchise is not implemented in the country in the future constitution, or under the future constitution, and elections are held, then these reserved seats should be given to the Muslims, right? Because the Muslims are mainly, they were mainly in majority, but if this adult suffrage is not given to them, then if the qualification for a voter is presented, Muslim might not fall, a lot of Muslim might not fall into the category of voter list, right?
What is this? Kindly explain adult suffrage.
Adult suffrage is like, if you have got national identity card in Pakistani term, you just understand it. And the government says that, okay, anybody who is above the age of 18, like who has got a national identity card, they are allowed to vote. They are allowed to cast vote. There is no other restriction for you to become a voter, but just to have your national identity card, which the government or the state gives you at the age of 18, right? Then you are eligible. So this is a kind of adult suffrage, right? That if you attain that age, then you are able to vote. There is no other qualification. Only age is the qualification for becoming a voter. While if this thing is not adopted, then you just give a lot of other conditions to become a voter, like you should be from this caste, you should be from that caste, you should be a business woman or a businessman or something like that. So you are narrowing down the vote bank of any community in this regard, right? The form of the constitution should be federal with residuary powers vested in the provinces. Now they were asking vested in the center. Muslim League is asking them to, these should be vested in the provinces, because they know that we cannot come into power in the center. We would be ruling some of the provinces in India, and these residuary powers should be vested with the provinces, so that the Muslims can do legislation for their own communities in their own provinces, right? This was kind of more, they were asking for provincial autonomy. Then Sindh should be immediately made separate province, and reforms should be introduced in NWFP and Balochistan at the earliest, right? So it was almost the same, but they say they had conditioned it with the financial self-sufficiency of Sindh. Now they are asking that it should be immediately done. Secondly, they just mentioned NWFP Muslim League had included Balochistan in it as well, right? That reforms should be introduced in Balochistan. So these are the kind of things which the Muslim League asked them to do, and then we would approve this Nehru report, and this will be the future constitution. These will be the features of the future constitution of India. Then we can present it to the British government. Now these Jinnah proposals, they were rejected when they were put in the all parties vote, to the all parties vote in the conference, and they were rejected. So that was why they could not be, they could not become part of the Nehru report, and the Muslims and Hindu, they were, you know, visibly quite divided over this issue of the future constitution of India, right? Now what happened as a result of this Nehru report and the rejection of these 4 points? The famous 14 points of Qaid-e-Azam, right? They say, okay, we do not agree with you on the future constitution of India. This is your report, you presented it from the common platform of the all parties conference, but we do not accept it. We will accept any future constitution which would have these 14 features. Then we would accept a constitution. Otherwise we would not accept a constitution. So they presented their separate demands in front of the British government in shape of the 14 points, and this is very important to mention here that in 1919 the First World War came to an end after the 14 points of Woodrow Wilson, right? So the whole world, the whole media was talking, the print media was talking about the 14 points of Woodrow Wilson, and they were analyzing in the newspapers and this and that, and you know, then you can see that the 14 points were violated, and Germany was given a very harsh treaty, the Treaty of Versailles, and then the Treaty of Sevres with Ottoman Empire or with the Turkey. So you know, even if the 14 points were violated, somehow the press was criticizing it, the press was, you know, commenting on it. So the aftermaths of the First World War were there. These you might call it the aftermath of the First World War. And these 14 points of Woodrow Wilson, they were in the newspaper, making, you know, every now and then making, people would refer to it in the newspaper, in the analysis and everything, you know. So Qaid-e-Azam devised his points for the future constitution of India in such a manner that they were distributed into 14 points, and these were the Qaid's 14 points, and then the media was talking about another 14 points after 10 years. So it was quite eye-catching for the international audience as well, right? And it was, you know, a kind of, I would say, a very wise step by Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah to seek attention by the international community for their cause. Attention of the international community for their cause, right? For the Muslim cause. Now, what was it like, you know, federal system? This was one of the points of these 14 points, right? That the future constitution should be federal with the residuary powers vested in the province, with the provinces, right? Then provincial autonomy, a uniform measure of autonomy shall be granted to all provinces. Again, they were asking for provincial autonomy because they knew that we cannot come into power in center, and we should be autonomous at provincial level so that we can safeguard the Muslims' rights or the Muslim interest in India where Congress would be ruling at center, right? Representation of minorities, this was another issue in those, like, you know, all legislative in the country and other elected bodies shall be constituted on the definite principles of adequate and effective representation of minorities in every province without reducing the majority in any province to a minority or even equality. Like, you know, you cannot say that you are not in a majority in this province and you are equal to another community if you are in majority, if a community is in majority, and then you cannot reduce or convert that community into minority due to your own tactics, you know. So you cannot do that, and that is why he was quite vocal in these demands against for the representation of the minorities. The number of the Muslim representative in the central legislature, Muslim representative shall be not less than 1/3. Like they were asking for 25%, the Congress or the Nehru report, and now they are again, Muslim League is asking for 33%. So not 1/3 at the center, right? Separate electorate, they were not in favor of it. The Qaid-e-Azam or the 14 points of Qaid-e-Azam, they were again asking for the separate or the continuation of the separate electorate in the future constitution of India, right? Now, Muslim majority provinces, what happened? Any territorial redistribution that might at any time be necessary shall not in any way affect the Muslim majority in Punjab, Bengal and NWFP, right? So, you know, territorial redistribution and distribution and demarcation of provinces and this and that, you know, in this way you can just convert a minority into majority and majority into minority if you just dissect a province in two. And then on these lines you would know that, okay, there are 10, for example, districts in this province or 25 districts in this province, and out of 25, 17 are Muslim majority, and these 7 or 8, they are Hindu majority districts, and then, you know, you just put 3 of Muslim majority provinces with the rest of the Hindu majority districts with the rest of the Hindu majority districts. So you are converting a majority population into a minority, you know, and then you group together the rest of the Muslim districts with another province with Hindu, a lot of Hindu districts. So then again you are converting it them into minority. So they were saying that these kind of tactics would not be acceptable in India, right? Then religious liberty, full religious liberty, belief, worship, observance, association and education shall be granted to all the communities in India, living in India, right? So this was another demand by the in the 14 points. 3/4 representation, no bill or resolution shall be passed in any legislative or any other elected body if 3/4 of the members of the community in that particular body oppose such a bill. Like, you know, if a bill is brought, I think I have explained this thing in one of the previous classes, but for your information, if a bill is, okay, tell me, what does it mean? Who can tell me what does it mean?
The bill is passed and it becomes a law.
Yeah.
So that's what happened.
But what does this point mean, this 3/4 representation?
So that means that majority should agree with what's going to be passed.
Majority of that community.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay, separation of Sindh should be separated from Bombay immediately, right? Without any conditions. Introduction of reforms in NWFP and Balochistan. Again, you know, they had just included NWFP and now they are asking for Balochistan as well. So this is again the same kind of thing. Government services, Muslims should be given adequate share along with other Indians in the services of the state. They were asking for quota system, like the Muslims should be given adequate quotas so that they can also reach to the high official or high post in the government services or the civil services, right? Then protection of the Muslim culture and the language, constitution should embody adequate safeguard for the protection of the Muslim culture, religion, language and civilization. So they were asking for this safeguard as well, because there were many Hindu movements at that time, and they were forcibly converting the Muslims, and they were asking them to come back to, you know, your original religion, which was Hinduism and not Islam. So they were the Muslim League or the Qaid-e-Azam 14 points just took care of that issue as well. 1/3 Muslim ministers, right? No cabinet, either central, provincial, be formed without being a proportion of at least 1/3 Muslim ministers, right? They were ensuring proper representation of the Muslims at every level. No change shall be made in the constitution of a state except with the concurrence of the state constituting the Indian Federation. Like, you know, if you are making changes in the constitution of a state and that state is not willing to do so, then you cannot do it. So they were again asking, the 14 points are again asking for that kind of thing. Okay, now you can see political gap between the Muslims and the Hindus. It was widening, right? Just compare the Nehru report and the 14 points and then the amendments, and you can visibly say that this thing was widening, the political gap was widening, right? And Muslims, it also made clear that Muslims in India are a separate entity, right? It again made clear that Muslims wanted their own identity without influence by the Hindus, right? And these points prepared the Muslims of India for a bold step to struggle for freedom, right? Like you can visibly, you can see, you know, this is what we call reading between the line. between the lines. So the reading between the lines is visible that the Muslims were going towards another destination, and they were quite bold and confident about it, that they need something different. They do not need what is presented to them, right? Then, you know, round table conferences, we would study it, you know, briefly in the same lecture, I hope, right? So we would study it, but these round table conferences, they were very important, and these 14 points, the Muslim representatives in the round table conference, they were demanding that the Muslims should be given all rights which have been mentioned, or the future constitution of India should incorporate all those points, these 14 points. Any future constitution in India should incorporate these 14 points in it, right? As a result of these points, you know, so again, you know, you can trace it, you can link it up with the Pakistan movement as well, you know. So now what happened, that this division was quite visible to Great Britain as well. The government, the officials, they also came to know that these communities cannot come together. They cannot agree on a single constitutional formula for united India. So in order to resolve their differences, they just convened a series of round table conferences, right, in which, you know, you can see almost all top leadership of Indians, Muslim and, you know, Sikhs, and, you know, they were just there. Congress attitude towards these conferences, it was not positive. Congress did not participate in these conferences, right? What happened? The first conference started in November 1930, lasted till January 1931, right? Almost, you can say, 3 months. Then second conference started in September 1931, lasted till December. Again, almost 3 months deliberation, right? There was a Gandhi-Irwin pact between these two conferences, the first and the second, but I just did not mention it over here because then it will, I just thought that it's not that necessary, but, you know, Lord Irwin just convinced Gandhi to participate in the conference and go there and have a say in it, right? Because Congress had boycotted the first conference, so then he was trying to convince Gandhi to go there and, you know, be part of these conferences, the deliberation. Then third conference started, not stated, sorry for this wrong spelling, started in November 1932, lasted till December 1932. So 2 months again. The outcome, unsuccessful. They could not reach to a common ground, both communities, right? So this was it. Okay. Now time for your presentation. I think that I would thank you here, and we would continue our discussion about the 1935 Act, then the Congress ministries, and then the Lahore resolution, and then things afterwards, and I would try to conclude that in the next class, so that, or in the next and then next 2 classes, and so that we just peacefully reach to the independence of Pakistan, and then we deal with the current issues and the constitutional and political history of of Pakistan, not united India, right? So I will try to conclude that in future 2 classes, right? Not later than that. Okay, I thank you all. Thank you very much.